Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the WTA Board of Directors meeting for Thursday, April 21st. First thing I'd like to do is ask for a roll call.
Okay, Davidson.
Here.
Fleetwood.
Here.
Hawkinson.
Here.
Cortice.
Here.
Lautenbach.
Here.
Lilyquist.
Here.
Sidhu.
Here.
Huffman.
Here.
And we have board members Donovan and Darwin absent. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. The first item is a employee recognition for Matthew.
I believe, Eric, are you going to do that? I believe.
I sure am, Les.
Thank you. Good morning.
Well, good morning, everybody. It is my pleasure to recognize 20 years of an operator, Mel Lokema. As Maureen pulls this up, I'll just pass along that he is unable to join us this morning because even after 20 years of being an operator and the ability to essentially choose whatever type of work he would like to choose, he chooses to work the night shift. And so 8 a.m. is a bit early on the backside of a night shift. So he's not here, but we will recognize him in his absence. So Mel, 20 years of a fixed route transit operator. He is also one of our cross-trained operators. And the one thing that stands out above all else for Mel to me is his professionalism. He just represents the WTA in such a professional way every day in all that he does. Mel was the union vice president for 10 years. And in that role, he, again, displayed this this professionalism that brought good conversation, good representation for his members, and in a way that we were able to work really well together to accomplish some tricky tasks between management and ATU. That kind of work has always been something that really drove Mel to support the coworkers that he works with and being able to help them and further their cause. He also just absolutely loves the role of being an operator and supporting the community. And in fixed route, he's got a bid shift. And so he sees the same folks every day for him coming home from work. And he's just a blessing to them. And so I don't know if anybody gets an opportunity to get out in the afternoons and evenings, but if you do and you see Mel, please give him a hearty huzzah and a well done for 20 years of just professionally representing the WTA. So he's not here, but thank you, Mel. Appreciate everything you do.
Thank you, Eric, for that. And sorry, I misread the agenda. That was for Mel. Thank you very much for your service to WTA and to the ATU. The next item on the agenda is citizen communications. Do we have any written communications, or is there any member of the public here who would like to speak?
We've received, oh, go ahead, Vicki.
I was just going to say we've received no written communications.
If there's any member of the public here who would like to address the board, they can unmute, raise their hand, ask to be recognized. Okay. Hearing none, we'll go on to the first action item, which is a closed session to discuss collective bargaining agreement. Closed sessions for collective bargaining are allowed under RCW 42.30.140. Approximately how long do we expect this will last?
I would say 5 to 10 minutes. Let's say 10 minutes in case we come back early.
Okay, and since this meeting is by Zoom, I assume that the board members will be taken to a breakout room?
Yes.
Okay,
Sure.
Let's go ahead and adjourn into the closed session.
Okay.
Moved.
Was there a second? I didn't hear it.
Second.
Thank you very much. If there are no objections, we'll consider all actions passed unanimously. Are there any objections to passing the consent agenda as presented? Hearing none, that passes. The next action item is agenda item G1, consideration of approval for a contract for federal legislative consulting services, otherwise known as lobbying. Ms. McCarthy, will you be presenting this?
I will. Yes. Thank you. Good morning. As we talked about last month, we are eager to begin a relationship with a professional firm that will help us with lobbying at the federal level. As I think we talked about, we found Van Ness Feldman Solutions, or VNF, who are expert in this and who we feel like will be good guides as we try and navigate the opportunities, especially that are before us at the federal government. And they seem especially adept at helping us develop strong relationships, both with our congressional delegation and the FTA. A question came up last week from Chair Lilliquist about the dollar amount, or excuse me, the hours that would make up the their monthly fee. And I spoke to them about that, and they said it's probably within the range usually of about 10 to 25 hours, with the month of August, for example, being a very low month. It may be so as low as 10 hours, but that really at other times of the year, it might be quite a bit more than that, for example, during appropriations.
Board members, any further discussions or a motion?
I had one question.
Yes.
Maureen, is this company does specialize in WTA, transportation or transit type of things, or others as well? Because we are also looking for somebody. So.
Oh, you are excellent. Well, they are especially focused on energy and the environment and emerging technologies. They do have some transportation experience, but they do a lot of work with municipalities. And yeah, I think that they, you know, we would love to share information about them because they sure seem like a strong team and definitely have experience with water districts, public utilities, municipalities, that sort of thing.
Sure, send me their website link or something, and
yeah, I'll be happy to.
Looking at it. Yeah, thank you.
And they're a Seattle-based firm with a DC presence, so they're very attuned to Northwest issues.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Any further discussion?
Right, to get it on the table, I'll move approval.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion before us to approve what is a 3-year contract based on billable hours. Total fiscal impact over 3 years is $180,000. There are renewal options, which would make a total contract over several years. Is that 5 years or 6 years? How many? Yeah, 5 years would be a total of $300,000 if all the hours were billed and we extended the contract. And I believe that extension would be done by the general manager. Is there any further discussion? If there are no objections, we'll consider the motion passed unanimously. Are there any objections? Hearing none, the motion passes. Thank you very much, everyone. The next item.
Mr. Chair, if I could just, there was a note in, for the record in chat that Megan indicated that Van Ness contract has language for piggybacking or allowing use by other agencies as well. So to Sat Paul's point. And thank you for letting me interrupt.
No, it's a really good point. Thanks for adding that. The next item, actually, we now go into a series of reports to the board. Les, why don't you go ahead and oversee this portion? The first part is the unaudited 2021 year-end financial report.
Oh, Les, I think you're introducing me, but you're muted.
Well, you'd think after all these years, I would learn that. Sorry. So I said great things about Erin, and Erin, thank you for joining us this morning. And she's going to talk us through the unaudited financial highlights. We do have the state audits underway now, and so I'll turn it over to Erin.
Great, thank you. Yes, so audit is underway, and in fact, hopefully all of you received an invitation to our entrance conference, which is happening in just a couple hours, but didn't want to keep everyone waiting to see some numbers. So we will present the final audited financial statements as soon as they are available, but wanted to just highlight some highlights. I will call out the note here. These numbers have excluded depreciation and the pension related adjustments that are required by the Governmental Accounting Standards Board Statement 68 as Most of you might be aware, 2 of the PERS funds were actually fully funded this year, which required some very different entries that you'll see on our financial statements. But for operational purposes, wanted to show some numbers without those adjustments. So hopefully, I won't go through these line by line. Hopefully there aren't any really big surprises here, but obviously revenues, as we've talked about throughout the year, were higher than expected, largely due to the CRISA funds that we received, 9.3 million in 2021. In addition to that, our sales tax was quite a bit higher than we were anticipating. Definitely saw some growth in local construction and got some travel and hospitality back once the COVID restrictions started to ease. Fair revenue was down a bit since we didn't resume collection until July 1st. As for our expenses, while they were up year over year, they were below budget, largely again because we didn't resume full service until the middle of the year while we did budget for bringing that back sooner. And then fuel, we really saw that start to increase quite a bit in 2021 and obviously quite a bit more in 2022. And on to the next, just that really did just trickle down to our balance sheet. So we'll see assets increase because of those funds that we received. We got quite a bit of capital assets in 2021. Highlighted there, we got our electric buses, quite a few diesel buses, paratransit buses, the North Lot property, and then we also did acquire the radios at the end of last year. So happy to take any questions. And yeah, as I said, I'll bring back the final audited statements as soon as we can.
Go ahead, Ted.
I have a suggestion for Aaron. Aaron, great information, and if you can put some graphics beside it, because
Sure.
a couple of minutes we get to look at it. I think it's a little easier for everybody. So that would be my suggestion.
Definitely.
Thank you
Thank
for the report. Yeah.
Any further discussion?
Just one point of or parliamentary order, if you will, is that on the state auditor's office entry conference that has been posted as a special meeting in case a quorum of the board attends that. Just point that out.
Thank you, Les. Unfortunately, I will be traveling and I won't be able to attend. Hopefully some other board members can.
The entrance conference usually is pretty straightforward. It's the exit one that is always the meaty one. Except with our great team here who is working on 25 in a row.
Yes, indeed.
Sorry, I didn't mean that for pressure wise.
Yeah, no pressure.
Okay, next item.
Okay, and I remembered to pull myself off mute. The next item up is Becky is kindly joining us to go over the 2021 performance report, which was a separate document that Vicky kindly attached to the email. So over to you, Becky. I'm sorry, screen changed and I lost you there.
Yeah, thank you. So I just wanted to talk briefly about the changes from 2020 to 2021. So in 2020, we had a couple months of regular service. Then we went to our reduced service and we continued that 30% reduction in service through June of 2021. So in 2021, we had half of the year at a 30% reduction in fixed route service. Then we had half the year where we went back to regular service. So for fixed route, boardings were down 11% from the previous year. And what I wanted to mention about that is in the fourth quarter, at the end of the year, we ended up about 50% of pre-pandemic levels in our ridership. And it continues to trend up. When I looked at the first quarter of 2022, we were about 60% of the pre-pandemic levels. So it is trending upward. We are getting ridership back, and it is matching up with the national trends as well. For paratransit, we're up 15% in boardings, still down 60% from the 60% level of pre-pandemic. So we have not regained all of that ridership, and things continue to open and more people are returning to the service. Vanpool was down 50%, 15%. That continues the trend that we've been seeing in Vanpool. Zone service was down 12%. And then we implemented a new service, the HOP service, in June of 2021. And for the year, there was 4,500 boardings. This service also continues to gain in ridership, and we're really excited about it. So with that, I'll open it up for any questions.
All right, I'll have one question. On the hop. So what's our benchmark, or I guess what's the feeling of the staff? Is it going as good as wanted, and is it or better or worse? And what's our benchmark for keeping it going? Do we have that in mind?
Yes, so I would say from my perspective, it's going better than we expected. We keep getting higher peaks per day of the number of people using the service. And I think we're working on developing what measure we're going to have to see if it continues. And we'll evaluate that after 2 years and then have a recommendation. I don't personally have Mary would be better to answer that, and we can get that to you.
Well, I'd say, just to add to that, one of our loose benchmarks is to evaluate that against our paratransit ridership. So it's trending upwards. It's getting close to that same level of passengers per mile or passengers per hour. So we're close to 3, which is what I think around what paratransit is. So that's kind of our working evaluation method at this point.
And are we keeping track of costs so that if we want to add a Ferndale or a Blaine Birch Bay hop in the future, that we could know what that will cost us?
Yeah, absolutely. We do have those costs, and we're evaluating what the cost is for that particular area. Each area is going to be a little bit different because of the size differential. But yeah, we're tracking what that looks like in terms of hours, frequency of service, how quickly you can pick up a ride and that sort of thing. So it would vary, but we have those numbers for Linden.
And that concept is captured in the 2040 plan as well as an alternative. So looking at that. And then in addition to the quantitative, there's also a qualitative piece that we hear narratives from folks that, helping elderly age in place, that they had to rely on friends to get to the grocery store, for example, and now can take that to get to, so it's given them some freedom and things. So there's both quantitative and qualitative aspects that we're trying to track on that will inform a decision.
And is there a benchmark to add a third one if we get it overloaded? A third one in Linden. We have two vans right now. Is there an option for a third one at some point?
Yeah, I mean, I think the issue we're dealing right now is with Saturdays. So what we're finding is there's more demand than what we expected on Saturdays. So we're up to over 30 passengers on a Saturday. And there are pinch points. One is, during the lunch break where we don't have a van in operation. And so right now we're evaluating, can we add another van on the Saturdays to pick up, those times where those peak periods when people want to travel. So that's the first question. And then the second question is, we do have some trips going down to, I don't remember the area. It's just slightly outside of Linden.
I know it's corner.
I know it's corner. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. And that has an impact on service elsewhere. And so we're evaluating what to do about that. And it happens when we don't have another van in service, like during the lunch hour. And so that's the other issue we're trying to deal with. So those are some things that are kind of sticky issues, but we're working through those and trying to come up with some solutions.
Yeah, and we're tracking the wait time for people and how long it takes them to get the ride. And that would be what we would use to evaluate whether we need to add additional vehicles.
I see Jen patiently.
I guess just regarding, we have a lot of users at the community center, and it's been a real blessing to them. But is the service area does that fit with our community? Could we grow that service area and still maintain kind of that 15-minute window of ridership? I guess I know there's some, and thinking about like Everson and Nooksack and Maple Falls and potentially other places that, you know, there's a guy out on the Van Dyke Road that would love to get to the center if they could, but it's not within that. I'm just wondering, when does the area get too big that it's not a value anymore, or it's not as helpful? I guess that was my question. If there's some information on that or thinking about that when we're planning this service.
Yeah, and I think the short answer is we believe that the current area is the maximum size that we can operate with 2 vans. And so if we start expanding that area, we're going to need an additional van. And I think the other factor too is how well is our software working to pick up shared rides, because I think a lot of this is premised on, you know, how efficient are those rides? Can we pick up multiple passengers? And I think there's a little uncertainty around that question, because obviously if the software is more efficient, then we can transport more passengers with the same number of vans. So there's a question there, and those are some of the questions we're going to be evaluating, you know, in this next phase. You know, once some time goes by, we can kind of see how those things are working and evaluate whether or not the need is there to expand that area.
Okay.
Well,
Good discussion. Thank you.
I have a
Go ahead, Eric.
I have a little question about your benchmarks. I want to know that, to make sure that they're, you know, reasonable, that we're maybe not biting off more than we can chew. Because I'd heard the 15-minute wait time. Is that realistic, or is 30 minutes a more acceptable wait time? Because the reality is, if you add another bus just to cover somebody at lunch, that becomes a huge expense and energy. And there's a lot more to that than just adding another bus for an hour or two. Now you've, you know, potentially increased the size of the program by 30 or 40%, which is fine in Linden for 2 years on a pilot program. But this is a program hopefully that will be in 5 different areas in the next 5 to 10 years. So I just want to make sure that those benchmarks are kind of within a reasonable time frame, as well as, like, if somebody knows they're having a doctor's appointment, that they call ahead of time. How many of these people could also ride the city bus? There're just a lot of factors, I think. And I think before we start adding bus after bus or whatever it is that we need to do, we just need to make sure that we're realistic. I mean, on what the expectations are. I mean, if Mayor Cortice wants somebody picked up within 3 minutes and jetted across the city, that's just not reasonable, right? And I know he doesn't. I'm just using that as an example. But I just think I think we're doing a great job with this. I think this is a wonderful program. But if we're going to have 4 or 5 of these in 5 or 10 years, we need to make sure that it looks exactly like it needs to look and runs as efficiently as possible. So.
Okay, thank you. Good discussion. And Becky, thank you for the report.
Mr. Chair, I see Sat Paul has his hand.
Go ahead, Sat Paul.
I just, I was going to talk at the end, but this thing came up, and I was at a conference of county administrators last week, and Franklin County is trying to work with, they're exploring, there's a company up in Eastern United States called VIA, something transit or whatever. And they are a public Uber company. So I think that we should explore that, not that for at an alternate to WTA, but for covering these pockets and places where we can actually be more efficient with the money we are spending and provide the same service to these rural areas. I just wanted to suggest that. Yeah, please explore into that. I have gone to their website, but I didn't have so much time to really explore. If somebody can actually make a phone call and and get them to give a presentation. It doesn't mean that we have to agree or take that service, but it seemed like what they had explained to me, Franklin County, that they are really looking to serve a lot of rural areas, and they have same issue, spread out, few customers, and sending transit buses was not economical. So just wanted to suggest that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anything else? Just a last comment. Linden Hop is a special kind of model. It's not zone service and it's not fixed route. And I think that's why it will probably succeed, is because it's tailored to a particular need in the Linden area with that shorter routes and frequent and flexible service. So, I mean, I think it's a model that works in its place, and it is not zone service and it's not fixed route. Okay, thank you very much. We now go on to the next item, I hope, which is an update on bullet point number 2. Mr. Wilder, will you be talking about this?
Yes, this would be mine.
Yeah, if I could just give a quick lead in, what we're trying to do is each month with the board is go over each of our 4 mission bullet points and how our actions are tying back to those mission statements on that. And then have it kind of inform a discussion as we move forward on our purpose and those kinds of things, and WTA and what our value proposition is to the community, to kind of structure that discussion. So we've done safe, reliable, friendly, efficient service. Eric did that. Thank you. And then Maureen covered partnerships last month. And so over to Tim on offering environmentally sound transportation choices.
Okay, number 3 of 4. Okay, here we go. So yeah, so this is the second bullet point in our mission statement. And I think at its face value, it seems pretty clear that public transportation is a sound, environmentally sound transportation choice. I think that's pretty obvious. And what I like to do is I like to think about this and maybe overanalyze it. And it seems to have 2 distinct components. One is this point about transportation choice, which seems pretty clear, and seems like that's something that we offer as an alternative to driving a car. So we offer obviously fixed route service, paratransit, van pools. We've got our on-demand service. So we've got choices. We also offer and participate in transportation demand management, which could be considered kind of offering a transportation choice. And there are other things that we've identified in the WTA 2040 plan about offering some additional choice. That is, are there vans that we could participate with other partners to provide? So I think it hits pretty well on that portion of the bullet. I think the one that is worth discussing is this concept of environmentally sound. What does that mean, and how does that apply to the services that we currently offer and may offer in the future? And I was thinking about this the other day, and I think the best way to measure whether or not something is environmentally sound would be through its through air pollution or its greenhouse gas emissions. That seems like the easiest way to measure it. There might be other ways to measure, and obviously there are other kind of aspects of what could be considered environmentally sound, whether sort of it has less noise pollution or less stormwater runoff or other kinds of things, which certainly you could talk about. But I think the air quality one is probably the one that stands out to be the most significant. So if we're defining it on the basis of air pollution, we kind of have to look at 2 things. One is what are the tailpipe emissions from our current bus fleet? What does that look like in comparison to, say, someone driving? And then what are the emissions that we displace? So that's, with the mode shift, people that might otherwise drive, congestion relief, and the land use multiplier effects, which is, we know that in some cases, offering public transportation could increase densities, increase areas that people might want to walk or bike, not necessarily ride the bus, but would shorten those trips. So that's the other thing that public transportation can do that would kind of offset emissions from driving. So thinking about this, kind of evaluating those 2 distinct elements, I was looking at a tool that is offered by the Transit Cooperative Research Program, which is a group that prepares many different research documents. And they've done a lot of research around greenhouse gas emissions and the benefits of public transportation, and coming up with some measurements around what those emissions look like. And so when I ran the numbers through the tool they developed, specific to WTA, we came up with a number of about 2.2 million kilograms of CO2 savings from offering public transportation. That's our fixed route service. That's savings over otherwise people driving. And that's irrespective of any electrification or any other savings. And that's just on the basis of looking at, you know, those people who would have otherwise drive and the average amount of driving and pollution from a single occupant car. And so it's based upon 33% of people that would otherwise be driving. And so that's equivalent to taking about 480 cars off the road a year. So there is a significant savings there. So I think you could say that, yes, public transportation offers, for WTA offers a sound, environmentally sound transportation choice. And then you also have to talk about some of the other indirect savings. You know, I mentioned land use densities that are enabled by offering public transportation. We think about Bellingham's urban villages and, you know, people living in close proximity to destinations. They don't have to drive as far. They could walk, they could ride their bikes. And some of that is enabled by having, you know, our GO lines. Then we also have to talk about other vehicles and other service we provide, paratransit, van pools, you know, the on-demand service, and those I think vary in terms of their environmental soundness. So they don't necessarily take cars off the road in terms of paratransit. So maybe that equation isn't quite the same for public transportation, not quite as environmentally sound in that definition. Certainly it does provide a valuable service, an important service, but it doesn't necessarily hit on that point as well as public transportation. Van pools, on the other hand, do take cars off the road, so it is a direct benefit, and it directly hits on that particular point. And then the last thing I was going to kind of mention is, obviously, if we introduce zero emission vehicles, that changes the entire equation. So then we hit on this bullet point even further, and our entire system then could offset those carbon emissions completely. So that one does definitely hit with the environmental soundness part of this element. Then I was going to kind of mention in sort of closing, and that is, you know, I've always interpreted this mission statement as more than just kind of looking at the services that we provide, but what we do as an agency. But that's not exactly how this bullet point is written. And I think the intent there is, the interpretation is that it's broader than just kind of the services that we offer. So I think that's maybe worth discussing as we're talking about these mission statements. Should it be more about sustainability? Should it be broader, a broader definition to include the kinds of things that WTA does, like with its facilities, you know, and including the services, so that we're not just focusing on kind of one particular aspect of what we do. So to that point, I think there are a few things that we've done to hit on the sort of the sustainability aspect, and that is, you know, we're extending the life of our Gillig buses. That's definitely saving on, you know, further wear and tear, further acquisition of vehicles. Installing LED lights at the Ferndale station would be an example of that. We have, Mike was telling me that we have an industrial stormwater management plan for Moab with inspections, spill prevention, et cetera. So that could also hit on that sort of the sustainability concept. So, and then we also have, I should mention, we also have coming up is the sustainability plan that Mary will be leading, that will hit on energy efficiency, stormwater, water usage, energy usage, and other kinds of factors. So anyhow, so that sort of takes me to sort of the broader concept that I see that this bullet point could lead to in the future. So that's kind of my thinking around this one, but be happy to hear any comments or discussion if you have any.
Thank you, Tim. What were the units again for the 2.2 somethings of CO2 savings?
Yeah, that's 2.2 million kilograms of CO2. So that takes into account the passenger miles traveled. It estimates that about 33% of travelers would otherwise drive, and kind of runs the numbers as far as like emissions from a diesel bus. And I think this is a tool we can use with our zero emission fleet transition study. It's pretty robust. I can refer the report to you if you're interested in how those numbers are developed.
Thank you. This seems like a real natural lead into the next agenda item. Are we ready to move forward?
Yeah, thanks, Tim. So on the next item as a lead-in, we'd come back with this, and Mike, to his credit, last month said it could be difficult, and it proved to be very difficult to compare the various types of buses. There's just not enough information to make any sort of meaningful comparison or trend line, particularly with having one of the vehicles out of service for an extended period of time, even from a cost perspective, because the electricity and the demand charge is spread across the electric fleet. And so trying to extrapolate off of that. So I just didn't think that it was worthy of, I thought it would cause confusion bringing it forward, because everything had multiple exceptions and but-fors kinds of things that attach to it. With that said, and the way I think to get after this discussion is we have Transpo engaged, and I'll look to Tim to talk a little bit about this, but we have a zero emission transition plan structured with a steady rhythm of briefings to the board on the various types of technology, the infrastructure that comes with it, moving towards a sequencing plan and so forth, all going towards that having enough information and by the September meeting, so that in October the board can consider whether to switch all or a portion of the diesel order to electric. As the board will kindly remember, we made an order for diesel, but we did that because the prices were going up and we wanted to preserve that price point. And then we have time to talk about switching some or all of that to diesel, including talking about next month a spend plan, so the board can see how we strategically allocate those resources that have come in as we try to align our resources with our purpose and our why. And as the board thinks through, do we continue with our putting buses on the road kind of mission, or do we look, as Tim highlighted, where we get a big bang if we're pulling single occupancy vehicles off the road? Do we invest more in transit demand management and transit oriented development, transit supported developments, those kinds of things, that land use involvement in those kinds of things that would have a great environmental impact, but also take a number of those resources to be able to do. So we're trying to tee that up for May for that discussion. Excuse me, I wasn't going to cry, just coughing. So I think it'll be a very good discussion to start next month, and over the next probably 5 months, having this discussion leading up to the October decision point on that, which also ties with budget going into to 22. So I'll pause there if Mike has anything to add, and then I'll turn it over to Tim to talk about the zero emission bus transition scope and the plan and our idea of how to bring that forward to the board, so there's enough information to have that discussion.
Yeah, I'd just like to add that, trying to come up with meaningful numbers to give to the board was very difficult. Without both buses in operation on a daily service, the amount of power, primarily the demand cost being spread out between one bus, partially in service, really drastically changes the cost per mile. Plus, we got more than one issue taking buses out of service. We're dealing with Gillig, we're dealing with Cummings, we're dealing with ZF on multiple parts of the bus that are new to the market, and they're all working with us. We've had multiple technicians here trying to work and solve our issues. They've been focused on us. At our WISTA maintenance meeting, I was able to get with the vendors and stress we need to solve these issues, and they agree and they're trying. It just takes time. These are new technologies, and with trying to come out of COVID, they've had staffing issues and equipment issues. So it's frustrating, believe me, but we're working on it. And it's helping our staff learn the equipment as we learned 10 years ago with our hybrids. And solving those problems helped our staff prepare for the transition to full electric vehicles.
I think we have every confidence we'll get there. Back to the comparison, what Mike's highlighting is that when we're studying these electric buses, there's topography issues, there's range issues, there is how the drivers operated, so training issues on those kinds of things, which we're working through. And when they're not in service, it's hard to get measurements of that to then accurately compare and so forth. But I think, and Mike, correct me, I don't mean to speak for you, but I think we're all confident that we'll get there. And this is just a technology transition time that we'll fix. And we'll be able to capture this in these transition planning to give the board what I think, Scott, you were looking for to kind of compare, okay, what is a hybrid, what is a diesel, what is an electric bus, and how do they compare in those factors. So I'll pause there for any board comments and then turn it over to Tim on the zero emission bus transition plan. All right, seeing none. Tim, over to you, good sir.
Yeah, sure. So just kind of as an introduction, we're working with Transpo and their subconsultant STV, both of whom have quite a bit of experience working with agencies on zero emission fleet transition studies. Transpo worked with one of the peninsular agencies on a transition plan recently. I think Jefferson Transit. And STV has experience with bigger agencies like Metro and LA and some big fleets. So they have the experience. We have the confidence that they can do this project well for us. So we're working on a scope of work right now with them. We're still in the process of making comments on that. But I did want to share some of the things that they've included in the scope of work, just so you can sort of anticipate what's coming your way. We have asked them to provide regular check-ins with the board, and they have three particular check-ins that they've identified. One is to do a technological assessment, and what that is what Les referred to, and that is evaluate the different technologies, the battery electric buses and the fuel cell buses, which are hydrogen source of fuel. So they're going to be evaluating that for us. They have told us initially that for small agencies, really our one choice is battery electric at this point. It's eventually in the future, it could be fuel cell, could become more attractive. But so they're going to come in and talk to us about those technologies and the whys and the whens, when we can anticipate sort of evaluating a new technology in the future. And then we've also asked them within that both to talk about sort of the question that I think you've been debating for a while, and that what are the carbon emission benefits, and given that our Puget Sound energy is not 100% zero emissions, what does that look like, and and to evaluate that for our fleet and the transition. So we'll be taking a look at that as well. And that we think that would happen in June. So at your June board meeting, we could bring that information with consultants and you could ask whatever questions you have around that aspect. And then in July, we're going to talk about route planning and analysis and how the transitioning range will affect our operations. And that will also include on-route charging. So as you know, we're putting in a charging station at CTS, and we have plans to put a few at BTS in the future, and how that could adjust the range and adjust kind of the routes that we operate on. So we'll be looking at that in July. And then finally looking at sort of the master plan and more information and more discussion in September. So I know August, we're going to jump August because that's when you typically have your offsite retreat, but we'll look at September for having that discussion, giving guidance on making decisions around this upcoming procurement. And then finalizing the plan in October is the current plan. So we come back around so you could approve or consider and approve the plan if you like what it says in October. So that's just really briefly some of the tasks we've identified coming forward. There's a lot more I could describe to you, but that's just sort of some of the highlights.
And part of that is we're looking for their help on how do we preserve decision space over time as technology may change that we don't even know is out there yet. How do we kind of preserve that decision space? And then also implicit in that is sequencing infrastructure and acquisition and training and those kinds of things, so that as we're as you know, we have two on order that are due in. That gets us about 7.5% of our fleet then would be electric. We're driving towards, pardon the pun, towards 12. We have the infrastructure to be able to do that. And then we need to be able to sequence future infrastructure with future acquisition, because we don't want to buy the bus if we don't have the acquisition infrastructure there, as well as how we would integrate them into the fleet. And as Tim said, I think there's some synergies there too that we're starting to explore with the city and the school district and others on infield charging and how do we synchronize those so that we're having a synchronized program across these various agencies, so that we're not duplicating things and can advantageously set that up. So with that, I will pause and see if there's questions on that, or if that plan sounds okay moving forward, or any objections, I guess. Okay. All right, thank you, board. And then I know this was a big issue for Todd Donovan, who couldn't be here today. So I did meet with him this week and kind of talked him through this as well. So he has this information because I know that was big for him. So, okay.
Thank you very much for that. That's an important topic. And I think we're ready for the final agenda item.
Yes, this isn't too big of a report, but just want to confirm in public on masks that we have gone optional on that and encourage that. We still will offer masks on the bus for folks that want that. I saw this morning that Department of Justice is appealing that order, so because CDC wants to continue, so we'll still see where we're going, but at this point, masks are optional on the bus. Also, I know one of the things that we get questions on is the restrooms down at the Bellingham station. Continue to work that. As you know, we have the porta potties out there for use now as we look at measures to make the bathrooms inside safe. As you know, the health department said we needed to clean those because of residue from drug use and safety. So we're looking at various measures there about eyes on, when people go in, so we can track. It's a combination of things, smoke alarms to lights that automatically turn off, and a variety of measures to do that. But it is something that Jeff Benson and Cindy and Mike and Eric are working hard on to come up with that solution. But I know we do get questions on that, so I wanted to make sure that you were armed on that one. And then the last thing referred to next month, have a discussion on what to do on the my term, not a great term, but kind of a spend plan for the grants that are coming in and the money that we have, and how we're going to strategically allocate that and make sure that organizationally we're all aligned with our purpose and kind of where we want to go, and alignment all the way across to outcomes and action plans and resourcing and those kinds of things. So we'll staff's hard at work on that, and we'll tee that off next month, which I think will help inform, as we're moving through the zero emission bus transition plan, help inform that discussion as well. So we're in alignment. So I'll pause there for any questions. If not, I will say, just for the record, Tim sent out the Transit Cooperative Research Program link. So if there's anybody on the public who wants that, let us know. We can get that to you. And thank you to Executive Sadhu on the services, the VIA in Benton and Franklin County. So thank you for confirming that. And we'll take a look at that. Right, with that, that's all I have, Mr. President.
Okay, is there any further business before the WTA board? Hearing none, thank you everyone for the good discussion today, and this meeting is adjourned. Take care, everyone.